So Deb, are you back in Indiana now?
I am in Indiana.
Any big Indiana state stuff on the ballot today?
Um, Actually, I voted yesterday.
Oh,
There was a little window from 8 till noon for early voting, and showed up at the city county building at 8 a.m. and there were only 4 or 5 people in front of me, so I was very happy.
you hear all these great stats on early voting, but it's more. I always go right when the polls open at 6:30 a.m. I try to get there, like 6:20. It was already the line this year was longer. There's a lot of Ohio State stuff and local in the city I live in stuff on the ballot. So, but good to see
I
people coming out and easier for more people to get a chance to vote in different ways.
Yeah, I think it's from what I'm hearing is they're expecting good turnout all over the country, so that's a good thing for our democracy.
It is, politically divided America right now, certainly, and the events of the last few years, I think maybe have made that maybe a little bit worse. But the glass half full way to look at it is a lot of people are interested.
Yeah, right.
That's my way of talking me through the political division that in this country that drives me as crazy as anything. So
I couldn't agree more.
hmm. It
But
was it.
there'll be some fun races to watch tonight for sure,
Oh, absolutely.
or else in the morning.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
likely.
Couple big bellwether ones. I know the state of Virginia, where the polls typically, it seemed like there's a big Senate race in Virginia that's very tight, R versus D, that everybody's looking at as a bellwether tonight. That is also one that the results should be 7, 8 o'clock tonight available the way Virginia polls are and they do things. So, but should be interesting.
Well, this will give people one less thing to think about. It's
Absolutely, yeah. Anything to push all this crappy housing stuff out of the news headlines.
Yeah,
When I'm yearning for politics to be there instead, that tells you how depressing the
yeah,
news cycle in our industry has been.
yeah. I agree. It looks like you're all decked. You've decked the halls already. I see
More to come.
Christmas stockings, a Santa, Christmas tree.
More to come. I mean, regular attendees to the live version of this show and the rundown I do with Rob on Fridays. You'll see
Uh,
just my backdrop will get just more and more Christmassy until you're ready to vomit at some point.
well, you're starting early, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, well, happy Tuesday, everyone. Rich Swerbinski with the Mortgage Collaborative here once again with the last week in Mortgage Today, our weekly whirlwind through all the latest in the mortgage and housing industries. And each week, very pleased to be joined by one of our lender members as my co-host. And this week, back in the co-pilot seat for at least the third or fourth time, the CEO and president, Hallmark Home Mortgage, Deb Sturges. Deb, great to see you.
Thank you so much, Rich. Good to be here.
And Hallmark, awesome, great culture, medium kind of large, IMB in the Midwest, the type of companies that we love here at TMC. And some good there you were telling me. I don't know if you want to talk about some good. You guys are growing and doing some good stuff. There's been a lot of negative stuff going on this year. So let's hear positive news.
Well, I don't know if many of you know, but Finance of America has exited the direct wholesale and their retail divisions, and they're going to focus on reverse mortgage, commercial lending, and something else that doesn't come to my mind. But I had had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman in their what's called their central division, Mark Wademan, well, maybe 2.5 years ago, right before the pandemic. And we've stayed in touch. And when he got pretty strong rumors that what was going on, he reached out to me. And I think I took the first flight to Kansas I could get that day. And so we worked together, and for the last, I would say 4 weeks, 5 weeks, of kind of putting a deal together, and 100% of his division came on board, joined Hallmark. And so we are super excited about it because, you know, you were so kind to say the things about our company and our culture, you know, what sets us apart. He really has run his division very, very much. He had similar product mix, loan balances, etc. But he really, you know, it was that the meeting of the culture that really made it work and was the reason that he reached out to me. So we're excited. We've brought on 60-ish employees, and so we onboarded them all last week. So we're now a larger uh, independent mortgage bank. So pretty excited about it.
That's congratulations. It's awesome. We've been
Yep.
saying it all year on this show. Good companies grow market share in down cycles like this, and perfect example of that right here. And it's not Hallmark's not some like big, huge, massive, like international. You guys are a very nice sized company, been around for a very long time, but you can make it happen, right? The right company,
Yeah.
you can still make it happen.
Yeah, it was a good, you know, when it's a good fit, you know, when it's not a good fit. And it's kind really kind of staying true to who you know, what you know about yourself and who you are. And and I knew this when I met him. And so I think that's part of why we've always stayed in touch. And so it's really, you know, two great groups coming together. And uh, we really are off to I think a very, very positive start. So um, we're couldn't be more excited.
That's great stuff. Because sometimes I sense, maybe don't hear it outright, but some of our small to medium sized lenders, feel like the deck is stacked. It's tough for me to grow or acquire. And the way what I always say is like, listen, every medium sized company was once tiny. Every large
Mhm.
company was once medium sized. Whatever you want to be, you can grow if you have good leaders, communicate well, and can kind of navigate all the waves in the ocean in our
Well,
industry and stay
I
out.
think you have to keep yourself out there. And, by, a couple of years ago when I met him, I was in that area for another reason. And a mutual friend in the mortgage business said, you really ought to meet this guy. He's not looking for a job, but you really ought to meet him. And so I always have this pact with myself. If somebody says I need to meet somebody, I make it a priority to do that. And so this paid off. So, and as I said, it's just they're so similar to us in so many ways, and core values that really stack up together. So
That's awesome. Well, a little deviation from the normal news headline, heavy start to the show, but wanted to start with that great news because it's very relevant and hearing it, right from a leader that has navigated a family-owned business through many, many types of cycles and continued to grow it through it, and just had a good win and success story. So congrats to you, Deb, and all the fine folks at Hallmark and Finance of America people. Congrats for them too, because they found a good home. So
thank you. I will pass that along to them if they're not on here listening.
all right, well, let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay.
And as always, any comments, questions, anything in the chat, please feel free to incorporate the chat, the Q&A, and we'll incorporate it into the show. And I already see some chatter in there about some nice words about the new Hallmark team members you just brought on board, and our friend Bob Niemi pining for the political ads to end. I won't miss those. I am, but anybody that knows me knows I loathe negativity. So thus, political ads are that part of elections to me are great drama and a reminder of why our democracy is great. Like, you don't like produce or get out of the seat. But the political ads, we're all ready to be done with those, I think, right, Deb?
Yeah, yeah. It felt good walking away from the poll yesterday. And it's time to see how the votes settle, and hopefully we'll get some flavor of, depending on how some of these races go, flavor on what some of the perhaps new direction on monetary policy and spending going forward is going to be. And of course, we're all interested in that, being in the housing industry.
Yeah, it's a weird election. I mean, you look at like the main topics that are driving people's decisions at the polls. COVID, not even like even in the discussion, like it's over, like forget about it. Okay, that's gone and done with. And some of the other traditional things of the past, not as much in the forefront because of what you mentioned, Deb, inflation in the economy. It's driving everything with our industry, but it's really driving things more broadly. And really, if you listen to what the experts expect to happen at the polls tonight, it's most are predicting a good night from the Republicans. Stock markets had a good week based off the perception that Republicans are better for the stock market, right or wrong. And because really, I think the inflation issue, it's just become too much of a Main Street issue. And we certainly are seeing that in our industry and really driving a lot of the decision make with voters today. No, Deb?
Excuse me. I should have put this on mute. Sorry about that
No big deal.
interruption.
Yeah.
What,
I'm sorry, just asking for your general feedback on the inflation impact on driving people to the poll.
I think that's, going to drive results just as you indicated. So, sorry.
Maybe it's your competitors in that Finance of America deal. Maybe they're on the broadcast and trying to distract you after.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I agree. I think that's what I've been reading, and I'm sure you have as well, is that inflation and cost of living and what's going on in the housing industry in particular, housing, shortage, rising interest rates, all the things that really threaten a healthy environment is raising the rates as rapidly as they're doing. Is that helping or is it hurting? There's just a lot of questions out there.
There's been no pandemic in the past, where you just unleash like just trillions of dollars into the economy, like just dropping it off at people's front lawns.
Right.
There might be some tailwind impact of that. Like, you don't know nobody's gonna work, just stay home, we'll pay you.
Yeah.
But right or wrong, the Democrats and the Biden administration, ultimately the Federal Reserve reports into the president and presidential administration. And when you talk about inflation and you look at the inflation and the impact it's having on Main Street, a huge component of inflation in general is household and housing inflation. What people are paying for their rent, their mortgage payments monthly, and all the other housing related impacts to cost of living. And for the first time, I guess for a long time in our industry, the general perception amongst leaders in the industry was that, we have MBA and others that are, fighting for us on Capitol Hill, but that the issues of housing finance, such a huge component of our economy, often aren't mainstream issues for voters, and government not getting in the mix too much. But then you saw the end of Trump with Calabria trying to get the GSEs out from their conservatorship. Trump loses re-election in what somewhat of a surprise. Calabria didn't get the job done. Biden comes in. They go to the Supreme Court. They basically are able to unseat Calabria, get a new CFPB in there. So now as we go to the polls today, you have federal governments playing a huge role in our industry. And, leaders like yourself, things you got to factor, decisions you make. It's just that housing is a Main Street issue as we go to the polls today, and I think that'll be also impacting the way people cast their vote.
I agree. No, I really do. I think there's going to be the winds of change is what I'm kind of looking, not necessarily forward to, but what I think is going to happen today.
Yeah. And as we predicted on this show a lot, as we head into as we're on election day now, also some increased pleas Things like, the FHA mortgage insurance premiums. Several different industry trade groups collaborated on a letter to HUD and Ginnie Mae about lowering those. A lot of just lobbyists of different trade groups, maybe not even our industry, just housing related issues, to try to address the inventory issue, the affordability issue. Same things we've been saying on this show for a long time. Like, there's no fix coming at all. So if you feel like it's in the benefit of the housing industry, but more broadly the economy in America, to do something about these headwinds to housing, it's gonna have to start with government. I don't know of your thoughts. I know you're very involved in advocacy and just making sure that those that are in positions of power in DC understand what is important to our industry and leaders like yourselves, and your thoughts on all that as we find ourselves in the midterms here.
Well, I agree with you. There are many groups really lobbying right now, from, home builders, realtors, HUD, going to HUD and Treasury, trying to get some easing of some of the issues that are facing the housing group. I think that Maxine Waters penned a letter recently to Jerome Powell, and I just jotted this down. But her question to Jerome Powell were, are you overcorrecting with the rate increases? Is this causing inflation to actually go up, not down? And so these are unprecedented times, and I think clearly the housing is in a crisis situation, really. And I'm not talking necessarily in terms of where the rates are, but really the affordability and the rates and the lack of housing stock for the people that really are in the greatest of need. And so it's just, as you mentioned, I think the government is going to need to get involved. How effective they will be with that, I think that remains to be seen. Washington
Normally,
moves.
like the fact that I
Washington
even
moves
find
very
myself
slowly.
sitting here saying, like, that the government is the answer, that is not my MO at all. Like, I mean, typically, when the government comes in to fix something, it's ineffective, too late. That said, in our industry, there's been some times where they popped in, it's been effective, most notably with what the hell happened with the Fannie and Freddie in 07, 08. They came in and backstopped it, and it's still in place right now. That it's made the government trillions of dollars, literally. It was a success story that isn't really talked about because it was a bailout, is kind of how it started. But I just, my worry is that, like, we're not building affordable single family homes in America. And my
Exactly.
worry is that the current administration's answers to the affordability issue, it's so centered around multifamily, commercial, things that are nice but won't move the needle, like ADUs and manufactured housing. At the end of the day, like, the optimal scenario is for a family is to own a single family home. That's not affordable for everyone. But it boggles my mind that we're not doing more in this country to explore how to bring down the cost to build just an affordable house. And it doesn't all have to be apartments and stick builts and manufactured and ADUs and I think the problem is, like, nobody wants to help the home builders because they feel like they got a lot of money or are doing great, or I don't know what it is.
Well, hopefully it'll come back in line, but I agree completely with you about, really affordability of housing. And what the government coming in and, as you say, building multi-unit apartment buildings. In the past, whenever they've done things like that, it was a quick fix, but it had a way of decimating neighborhoods, poor workmanship, fraud, et cetera, like that. And that's what scares me about government intervention from that standpoint and those programs. And I think it's being discussed in Biden's administration right now.
That's good.
Not saying it's a bad thing, but there's been a bad history
Mhm.
of government intervention. And
Oh yeah, you're preaching to the choir. You know, I mean, I'm just, I'm thinking in the scenario, like, just like how many years, like where I live in Ohio, where you live in Indiana, like there's zero homes being built between like 150 and 350,000, like zero, none at all. And lots and lots are being wiped out. And I get it that, cost of living and inflation and all that, but I worry about, you talk about like tailwinds, what we're going through now with the economy and like, just printing money, like for the pandemic. Like I worry about the cumulative effects of not building any like low to low medium and single family housing for like
you know,
decades in a row, like what that could do long term, but
it's
we'll
a
see.
scary thing to think about, but you've been in this business a while. I certainly have, and we've seen the pendulum turn very quickly. And so, hopefully good things are coming down the road, because things don't all, everything changes. And hopefully it doesn't get worse in terms of rates, affordability, um, building supplies. Hopefully those things come back in line and we can find a new normal to live in and to address some of those things that you're talking about.
Should be
So
interesting.
germane to what this country is all about, and that's home ownership.
It really is. You're on a lot of planes like I am. I just, there's a lot of empty space in America. Lots and lots, like just creative ideas, thinking like, just throw up apartment buildings. I don't know. To me, it just seems like maybe a little too much. I guess I get it. It's easier. It's the quick fix.
Mhm.
It can produce stats. It can help lead the re-elections and all that, but we'll see what happens. So one thing that isn't changing ever in our industry is the need for, though, people to be involved. Like it's one thing to say, oh, they do a great job, or I'm glad that so and so's involved, but and you're an involved person. That's why I'm bringing this up. And like we need to be involved. And a nice note in the chat from Stan Foraker, good longtime TMC member, board member, that says local, state, and national political action committees are more important than ever. Many legislators don't really understand the fact that housing represents 15 to 18% of our GDP in a given year. Think about that.
Mhm.
We have to educate them. Interested in Deb's take on how to most effectively influence our legislators? What a great question, Deb. So,
Yeah. I am a board member of the CHLA, the Community Home Lenders Association, who recently merged with the CMLA. We've got some 50 members now. Um, we are so active. We're talking about, one of the questions that you gave me is that, could we see a shift in one of the elections that would impact the CFPB, as an example? If that happens, we're going to be at their doorstep. Just saying, okay, there are 3 or 4 issues that we really need to be talking with you about. But what I find when, and we get, we're able, like we met with Calabria, we've gotten into, um, you know, Scott Olson has gotten and has an open door with anybody as long as he can take the time and set up these meetings. But it's really about, and you hit the nail on the head, it's about education. And with, you know, Congress and the Senate, it's really about education. It's amazing to me how much people are really unaware of, just there's a host of, I can't even come up with all the different things that they're voting on that they really don't have a good understanding of. And so to answer the question, you have to be an activist, you have to get involved, you have to roll up your sleeves, and you have to donate some of your time. Obviously, it can't be 100% of what you're doing if you're running a business. But, I just got off a hour and a half call with the CHLA today, going through a host of issues. And so it's becoming involved and appearing when you need to appear before the right people, sending the right message, answering questions, telling them what it's like really on Main Street. So that would be my advice, is just activism.
Well, that's great advice. And I have so much respect for people that give of themselves to the advocacy of the industry. Because, the only people that are in a position to do that are leaders like yourself, whose their time is very valuable. There's no return on it. Like if you go meet with the Finance of America people and you 2 or 3 flights to Kansas and hey, I got 60 new people. Like, Deb Sturges individually isn't going to change any politicians, even with your extreme levels of influence, any individual politician's mind on anything. But we have to be doing that in this industry. And I have a lot of respect for the people like you, Stan Foraker, who's in the chat, that give of themselves to that, because it really is selfless. And it's for the greater good of an industry. I say it all the time. DC, better than anybody, hates our industry. They don't understand it. They think we make gobs of money, and they don't get it.
That is the truth. And that's been my experience too.
Mhm.
And also, certainly there's a willingness on their part, and they really appreciate folks like myself and others that come and spend the time to maybe give them a different dimension on a certain issue. So, I always think that myself, others, are met with a really an open mind, and they appreciate the fact that they're getting to hear from Main Street America versus some other source. So I do
No,
think I know that it makes a difference.
makes a huge, and that is one thing I will say about this administration. Their leaders, Sandra Thompson, Julia Gordon, one after another, have not only agreed to speak with our members, but I'm saying like genuinely look them in the eye and genuinely want to know the unintended consequences of things they're doing or thinking about doing. So that's a good thing. And if the Republicans do have the red wave tonight, it's only better for our industry from the standpoint that they're going to be even more inclined to listen, with a split Congress and things needing to get done. So one last thing I wanted to hit on that you touched on briefly, though, is let's think forward. Let's just assume we get the red wave tonight and Republicans do what most think. In that scenario, the House Financial Services Committee gets switched over to Republican leadership, a guy by the name of Patrick McHenry from North Carolina, who has a very well-respected legislator for sure. He has been a frequent critic of the CFPB. And so
Yes.
just along those lines, you would expect if the House goes Republican tonight, that very, very important House Financial Services Committee that gets so much stuff started that involves our industry, that their focus is going to be on the regulatory community, not as much like, oh, remove all these consumer protections, but, like the CFPB forever, their funding structure and like, who do they report to? It's just been very nebulous. And I think that could be one of the first focuses of a Republican House Services Committee.
Yeah, we actually talked about that today on our call. And so I think when you bring up CFPB, what comes to your mind is regulation by enforcement. And so all that is shrouded under the, as I had talked about on this call earlier, is that, we all, whether they're in my shop or another shop, we all have to be ready for them. And they haven't been as open and honest about what they're always looking for. If you ask a question, maybe months before you get back, but you're really preparing your company so that you are doing everything the very best way you know how. And so certainly, I think if the leadership changes, that I think that that could take on, not that it would go away, certainly. Regulation is good, it's not bad, but regulation by enforcement, I don't believe in. And I think a balanced regulation versus industry versus over-regulation is really what we're talking about.
Maybe we'll finally be there, like regulation by enforcement. And Trump, there was like the CFPB was just like, I don't know, they were like playing Nerf basketball for 4 years. I don't know what they're doing. And it seems like we're now getting like to the, all right, maybe in the middle somewhere. Which
In the middle would, I think we would be all grateful if we would be in the middle.
Well, Deb, great co-hosts, make the time fly by in the last week of
Yeah.
Mortgage Today, and certainly was the case today. Really, really enjoyed the conversation and getting the chance to catch up and get your insight on a lot of really relevant things right now.
Great. Thank you so much.
And to our attendees, thanks as always for spending 30 minutes your week with us here on the last week of Mortgage Today. We're here live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, podcast where most of you listen. Join the live broadcast. It's every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can go to mortgagecollaborative.com to register for that. So until next Tuesday, have a great rest of the week, everyone. Thanks again, Deb.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.